Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Couple more people filtering in, so we'll just wait for just another couple of minutes or seconds, actually. Okay, ready to get started, Abrah? Okay, welcome, everybody. My name is Madeline Charney. I am a research services librarian at the University of Massachusetts Amherst Libraries. And before we get started, I would like to offer a land acknowledgement, and this is the official one from UMass Amherst. We acknowledge that UMass Amherst was founded and built on the unceded homelands of the Pecumtuck Nation on the land of the Norwottuck community. We begin with gratitude for nearby waters and lands. We recognize these lands and waters as important relations with which we are all interconnected and depend on to sustain life and well-being. The Pecumtuck had connections with these lands for millennia. Over 400 years of colonization, when Pecumtuck peoples were displaced, many joined their Algonquian relatives to the east, south, west, and north. That includes Mashpee and Akina Wampanoag, Nipmuc, Narragansett, Mohican, Pequot, Mohican communities, and Abenaki and other nations of the Wabanaki Confederacy. These Native peoples still maintain connections and relations of care for these lands today. We also acknowledge UMass Amherst is a land-grant university, and as part of the Moral Land Grant Act, portions of land from 82 Native nations west of the Mississippi were sold to provide the resources to found and build this university. As an active first step toward decolonization, we encourage all of you to learn more about the Native nations whose homelands UMass Amherst now resides on, and the indigenous homelands on which you live and work. We also invite you to deepen your relationship with these living lands and waters. So thank you for allowing me to offer that. And in the chat later, there is a link for you to explore homelands of where you currently are living. And so I want to first thank my colleagues at the libraries, Luke Doubleday, Kim Phil, and Lauren Weiss for their tech and outreach support for this event. And now I would like to introduce Abrah. So Abrah is going to talk today about her wonderful book, Regenerative Design for Changemakers, a Social Permaculture Guide. And I'm really honored to have you here tonight, Abrah. Abrah is a social designer, consultant, and educator. Her work is about personal and cultural regeneration by design. In her commitment to social justice and cultivating systemic change, she focuses on uplifting the personal, collective, and ecological dimensions within all of the projects she stewards. And I can attest to that. I've done a lot of work with Abrah in many workshops, especially with libraries and in the climate change movement. And she brings all of these elements to everything she does. She fosters others' imagination, agency, and trust in their embodied experiences. And she is the co-founding director of Regenerate Change and a faculty member here at UMass Amherst in the Stockbridge School of Agriculture. And Abrah, I'll hand it off to you now.
Thank you so much, Madeline. Welcome. You've arrived here on the planet at this time in history. You are one of the billions of people who have joined the forces of life during a crucial tipping point. Together, we are dreaming the world into its unfolding future. What message sealed in the chambers of your heart do you have to offer the world on the brink of ecological and social crises? A world spinning off its axes and toward an unforeseen transformation. How will you reveal that message actively and authentically to yourself? And how will you communicate your message to the other brave ones on the planet today? So welcome. Thank you all so much for being here. My name is Abrah Dresdale, and I use she and her pronouns. I'm calling in from occupied Lenape and Mohawk territories, in my home region of the Mahicanatuck River Valley, also known as the Hudson River Valley in upstate New York. I'm so honored to be here with all of you. And I was going to wait to the reveal at the end, but to let you know, this is my very last work engagement until I go on maternity leave. I am 37 and a half weeks pregnant. So, so grateful to be with so many loved ones, people who I know, people who I've worked with, people who have supported me in this book. Lots of you are going to get a shout out in a little bit. But yeah, so excited to be on this journey. We're going to be together for about an hour. And then if people need to sign off, there will also be time for Q&A after that hour we are together. And I want to thank UMass Libraries and Madeline Charney, my dear Jewish change maker activist auntie, who has been such an incredible supporter of this work and this book. And UMass, where I teach as an adjunct faculty in the Sustainable Food and Farming program. And yeah, just really grateful to the ancestors who have supported this work coming to fruition, and all of the accomplices on this call and elsewhere. So if you don't have a cozy drink or some wine, it is a book launch party, so you might want to grab something. If we were together in person, I would be putting out a huge spread of cheese and crackers and local jams for y'all. So feel free to get up and grab that to make yourself feel extra cozy. So I wanted to start with a little bit of storytelling about myself, because context, I find, is always so important when we are doing ecological and social design in a mindful way that responds to the unique conditions of our times. And a little bit about the story of this new birth, Regenerative Design for Changemakers. And we'll get to hear a few excerpts. You're going to get a party favor in the form of an exercise from the book. And yeah, and then we'll have opportunities for questions and answers. So that's the arc of our evening together. And I wanted to start by just sharing a little bit about my story, and then we're going to get to hear from each of you in breakout rooms and pair shares and what resonates with you in your own personal story as changemakers or aspiring changemakers. So let's see, I wanted to start by saying that I had a radical shift in kind of the values that were thrust upon me. You know, my parents were raised working class and lower middle class with, like, you know, white American upward mobility ethics of, you know, strive, self-sacrifice, deny your whole self. And I was raised with a lot of those messages and a lot of pressure on me. And after leaving Wesleyan University for 2 years of being there, because it was an incongruent fit with who I was, I ended up transferring to a state school, SUNY New Paltz, which is why I'm back here in this region, so many dear friends and loved ones. And at that time, I was able to actually craft a meaningful interdisciplinary degree for myself. And in so doing, I connected with a lot of folks who were, at the time of my graduation, co-founding a nature awareness outdoor education program, and that became a school today known as Wild Earth Programs. And I became really excited about the multiple functions of nature, and how, you know, instead of going to the Walmart, we can actually go to the forest and have our food and our medicine and our relationships and our like ways of understanding ecologies and interconnections, where we're walking down the aisle of a Walmart or a Walgreens, and there's just so much seemingly abundance, but it's actually disparate and disconnected. And then I traveled down to Austin, Texas, where I learned permaculture design and went to botanical medicine school and became really fascinated in the ways that nature can be designed for, and how can we actually, as keystone species, as human beings, shape the landscapes around us. And my background in college at Wesleyan actually had been in architecture and design. And then in New Paltz with psychology and anthropology. So weaving all these things together, I was so excited at finding this idea of permaculture. And, for those of you who are new to permaculture, the definition I like to give is it's a practice of going out into the natural world and observing ecosystem dynamics. And then we mimic them, the patterns, the principles, processes, in the design of landscapes and social systems that are regenerative and that give back and create surplus, rather than extraction from the land or exploitation from human labor and human bodies. And from that journey, I was really excited to go to graduate school. I finally found the ideal program, and actually Madeline's also an alum, called the Conway School of Landscape Design, which brought me to what is now known as Western Massachusetts, the Quineticut River Valley. And I studied a very rigorous design process there. And I came out, bright-eyed, bushy-tailed, like so many late 20s somethings, excited about permaculture and sustainability. And I quickly realized that the field was saturated with, no offense to anyone on this call, y'all are completely good, but it was just a monoculture of white, cis, straight men who were talking like they knew what they were talking about, but I think they were probably making a lot of it up. and it felt like, again, like an inaccurate alignment, as I had felt at Wesleyan time before. And I was like, I don't think that this is actually the field for me and my gifts and my identities to be well received. And what I'm noticing is that the field of, social justice and change theory and movement buildings actually could probably really benefit from rigorous design thinking inspired by the natural world and grafted with social justice principles. And so I got really excited after meeting my colleague, Lisa DiPiano at UMass Amherst. We began teaching together outside of the university about 12 years ago. And I got really excited about this idea of social permaculture. And since that time, these ideas have morphed. I've had much more of a critical analysis of permaculture as a field, although I'm not in binary thinking. I don't want to throw the baby out with the bathwater, but knowing that the term permaculture was coined by two white Australian male academics in the 70s who, probably very unconsciously were taking ideas and technologies of indigenous people from around the world and co-opting them into this umbrella that they were benefiting from in book sales and teaching engagements called permaculture. And so since that time, my thinking has evolved more and more. And what is regeneration? And how do we apply regenerative social design to the social landscapes of our personal lives, our community scale, and our wider social systems? And so that's a little bit about how I came to be an educator in this field and how I came to write this book. So currently, I teach at UMass Amherst. I mentioned that, as well as Omega Institute. Laura Weiland is on the call, and she has been an incredible supporter. And we piloted our first Regenerative Design for Changemakers course at Omega in 2015. I continue to teach the ecological literacy immersion program there. And in 2017, I met my now dear friend and colleague at Omega, Jasmine Fuego, and she and I co-founded Regenerate Change, which is the organization that I co-direct with Adam. Adam, do you want to just say a little hello? Adam Brock? We can't hear you unless you are purposely on mute.
Yeah, sorry, I needed host permission to unmute. Hi, everyone. It's such a joy to hear you tell your story, Abrah, and to see how it's come here. And it's been an honor to be part of this last phase of the journey with you.
Thank you. And if we could make also Asia Dorsey a co-host so she can unmute. Asia as part of our incredible team at Regenerate Change. You want to say hey, Asia?
Hi, Abrah. Yay, so excited about your 2 births. So excited. I loved hearing your story, and I am so jazzed for the rest of the session. I have the old copy of the book, so gonna upgrade that, get the new copy too. So proud of you and so happy to be on this journey with you.
Thanks, love. Thank you both for showing up. Yeah, so Regenerate Change, we span between the bioregion here in the Mahikanatuk Valley. Also Jordan Williams and Lila Rimorlovsky are part of my local team here. And then we have a whole umbilical cord out to occupied Arapaho and Ute territories, what is known as Denver, Colorado, where Asia and Adam reside and teach and have an incredible node of social change makers out there. And so we do education, consulting, and network weaving. And part of my personal praxis in putting change making in action has been for the last 7 years or so in the form of working in jails and prisons around prison food justice, working with climate change makers such as Madeline Charney to support them in doing their work more effectively, working in the fields of undoing racism and building solidarity across difference, and working with earth-based Jewish communities on cultural healing and healing from assimilation and forms of genocide. So those are some places where I'm really excited to draw from in the book from personal experience. And I've also been, in academia about 12 years. And how do we transform, what are often toxic cultures in places like prisons and academia that are traditionally very opaque and hierarchical and infused with white supremacist culture? And how do we actually help these organizations really fulfill the mission statements that they put forth, right? Or really think radically about how do you utilize federal and state dollars to transform the experience of incarceration so that people are coming out on the other side with resilience and skills and nutrition and jobs. So that's kind of at the heart of the change making work that I like to do. And the last thing I wanted to share about myself is that the place where I imagine growing into is around ritual design and seeing how much the overculture, at least in this country, to me feels like it is mostly degenerative and sickly because we actually don't have rites of passage to move out of an adolescent egoic consciousness by which every micro to macro decision has been made in our social systems. And I'm really excited about how do we create regenerative ritual design and write my next book on that, from birth cycles to death cycles to identity transitions, etc. So stay tuned for that postpartum for the next round of how do we think regeneratively on the cultural level, not just on the kind of organizational level and personal level, which is the focus of my first book. So I wanted to just give a few more shout outs to some folks who I think are here because this book has been on a long journey. Asia mentioned that she has the original beta copy, which was released in 2018. I put it out there for trialing and testing and refinement. And very excitedly, my first choice publishers, who were New Society, based out of Vancouver, Washington, picked up the book in 2019. It was going to be out last year. We were 4 months away from going to print, and COVID hit, and small publishers really were very vulnerable to bankruptcy. And so New Society had to release my title along with half of their titles in the queue, which was, as you can imagine, very challenging. But the theme of 2020, as I'm sure most of you know, is disturbance and thinking about how do we bounce back resiliently, like a big blowdown or hurricane comes, and how do ecosystems regenerate themselves. And through a lot of support and resources in the form of social capital and emotional support and creative ways of doing entrepreneurship, I was able to come to the realization that it was time to self-publish and release this book as an uphill regenerative battle, but it is here. And I wanted to give a special shout out to my buddy Z Estime, who's on this call, who is an incredible accountability buddy and cheerleader. And I know your camera's off, Z, so no pressure, but I just wanted to lift you up as such an incredible champion in the last year of supporting me in this process. And I wanted to uplift Leora Friedman, who is my co-coach and helped me develop a few of the exercises that you might read about in the book. Do you want to just give a little wave, Leora, love? Leora is an incredible writer and educator and professor and change maker, and so grateful to have you on here. I think also Katie, I think you're on here, Katie Andrews. If you want to come off camera, but no pressure. Katie's been an incredible person helping me with online research and self-publishing and launching a new website, and just like an incredible accomplice to this project. So definitely check out her work. Katie Andrews, thank you so much for being here. And let's see, I think there were a few other people. I already gave shout outs to Madeline, to Laura Weiland. I think my buddy Naima had registered, but I don't see her, and she gave an incredible endorsement. She's a program manager up at Soul Fire Farm and co-founder of Wild Seed and Climbing Poetry, and endorsements from her and Eric Tonesmeyer and other incredible change makers that I just feel so honored to be in the presence of. Ellie Labovitz, dear friend, is on, who helped me think about the self-publishing journey back in the spring. Julia Walsh, a long-term accomplice who's helped me think systemically and connected issues across scales. So just so much support here, and just such a wonderful culmination of that. So yeah, so those were some things I wanted to share about the book's birth. The intended audiences are thought leaders, perhaps like yourself, organizational decision makers, entrepreneurs, educators, and college students. So it's really an interactive guidebook that is, designed to actually be written in. And, if we were in person, I would pass them around, but I cannot do that. So you're going to get a sample download. And there's 45 interactive exercises, and the first half of the book, which you'll get to hear from after our pair share, takes us through the self as a blueprint for systemic change. And then the second half is how do we turn outwards into our broader change-making work and apply that rigorous regenerative design process to our change-making projects of our choosing. So that's a little bit about the layout of the book. I started writing it in January of 2017 when Trump was inaugurated. I felt just so disheartened and slammed, like I'm sure perhaps others have felt on this call. And I said, what can I do? How can I best express my heart's calling and my unique message to the world? And this book is an expression of a call for action and a call for healing in a time of deep, deep duress in this country. And the last thing that I want to share, I think, is that I had a very intense injury. I had a neck injury and a tailbone injury exactly 7 years ago from extreme burnout, working at a community college and being in a technocratic, oppressive environment, working in a tiny box office with no windows and no plant life, and I burnt out and my body gave way, and I actually had to be on medical leave for 3 months. And during that time is when the messages came forth, like, you need to write this book. A lot of my work is informed by cycles of time, whether it's the natural world or Jewish cycles of time. But exactly 7 years ago was Shemitah, which it is this year. It just began in the fall in Rosh Hashanah. And it literally means to make a release. And so at that time, I felt I was released from, for me, what was not congruent, which is the culture of being an employee in a large institution. And to make a release from being on that sort of benefited, upwardly mobile, middle-class track to releasing into entrepreneurship, into risk, into passion, into trust and danger simultaneously, trying to live in this late-stage capitalist world as a woman business person. And so it is 7 years later that the book is finally released. I am going on maternity leave, not medical leave, and I am making another release, and really grateful to see, what comes after this time, after the concentric rings of the book, and after an identity rite of passage change into mamahood. So I wanted to share these stories, this context as part of the design process, and an offering to you all. We're going to have a chance in a moment to get into pairs. And if you could drop the question, Madeline, into the chat box. But what in any of these stories I've been telling resonate for you in your journey as a change maker? What are the themes or the archetypes that are alive in your personal journey? And so we'll have an opportunity, 3 minutes each, to take turns listening to a buddy. This is, of course, by consent. I want to request everything that is shared in that room remains in that room. You can, of course, speak about your own story to someone else, but you're going to leave your buddy's story in that room. Does that sound good to everybody? Yeah, okay, great. So you're going to get that invite, and then we'll come back together, and I'm going to do a little more reading from the book and share with y'all an exercise. See you back in 6. Welcome back, everybody. Also, I want to shout out my buddy Liz, who is an incredible cookbook author, and early on was giving me lots of resourcing in her journey. Author of the Gefilteria. Definitely check it out if you're interested in traditional Ashkenazi food with a local sustainable twist. All right, so I mentioned that the book is in 2 sections. And so I want to read you a short excerpt from each one to give you a flavor of what some of the gems are that are packed into this book. So this comes from section 1, Personal Regeneration for Changemakers, the self as a blueprint for systemic change. The worldviews and messages we incubate inside ourselves radiate out and affect all we touch, all that we create. As change makers, we are necessarily part of our designs. As individuals, each of us is a site for systemic change. If we don't actively and thoughtfully design our inner landscapes, i.e., our emotional, spiritual, and mental health, in a way that brings about vitality and regeneration, we will necessarily radiate out old, outworn patterns into our external lives, i.e., our relationships, our family systems, our work. In order to imbue health and wholeness into our change-making creations, we too at the center need to embody these life-giving qualities. This direct link between our inner landscapes and our outer creations is why section 1 of this book deeply explores the self. From section 2, chapter 11, Social Design, Consciously Wedding Goals to Analysis. All humans are inherently designers. By our very nature, we are creative beings. We can generate infinite solutions to any one problem. The regenerative design process provides a structure with which designers can create elegant and capacious solutions that respond holistically to a number of problems simultaneously. In permaculture, we approach design as a verb, not as a noun. To design something is an imaginative living process. Alternately, the design, when viewed as a noun, reduces design down to a static product, a thing that can be easily mass-produced or commodified. The living approach to design used in this book reflects a paradigm of solution emergence, whereby innovative responses reflect the unique conditions of each project. This paradigm stands in contrast to that of mechanized production, often disguised as best practices, which can actually result in formulaic solutions and cookie cutter outcomes. These predetermined solutions generally end up rehearsing the same patterns of degradation and mindless hurt we aim to transform. I hope that gives you a little flavor around language and purpose of chapters of sections 1 and 2. Thanks, Madeline and Kate. And I want to, for those of you who are visual learners and not auditory learners, I wanted to share a few slides with you and the party favor exercise. So let's see, I'm going to screen share here. Okay, Madeline, give me a thumbs up if you can see that. Yep, great. So, you know you are here at this virtual book launch party. Welcome. This is the regenerative design process that I use in the book. There are so many, there's not any one correct one. This one is unique in my fabrication of it because it has a reflection and integration, 7th direction at the center, which I have not seen anywhere else. This comes out of my personal success with the practice of Shabbat, the importance of slowing down to contradict the go, go, go over culture of capitalism and westernization, and actually glean from our experiences to recognize that it's time to integrate. How can we learn from successes and challenges and put those in our pocket and store it for the next cycle around the wheel? And you'll also notice the mustard interconnected lines, that this is a nonlinear process, even though there is a general flow with the green arrows, and that it's iterative. It's not fixed, it's liberatory. There are infinite solutions that can emerge. And so it's really based on living systems. And so how can we harness this to our endeavors? So this is just, one definition I like to give of regenerative design. The conscious design of multifunctional human ecosystems at the intersection of social, economic, environmental, and cultural systems, all within a framework of social justice and environmental ethics. So I know that's kind of a heady thing, but the book unpacks all of this for you. And each chapter in section 2, we go through one phase in the design process. So for instance, chapter 8 is context and breaks it down and gives you exercises and examples and so on and so forth. And I just wanted to, highlight context this evening because it's always my favorite, but we've been there. I've shared some of my context. You've shared some of your context. And context is just so important for not creating those cookie cutter solutions. How do we really use our observation and our senses and our multiple intelligences to understand the context for which we are designing very unique solutions to each challenge we're up against? And analysis and assessment, Madeline, if you could share the project sector exercise, which we won't take time to do today. I know it's the end of the day for a lot of folks, at least here on the East Coast. But this is an exercise for change makers, for any change maker. And it's a Google Drive link, so you can easily look at it right now or download it later. But it walks you through creating some observations of the context of your change making work. And what are some interpretations? So what? Why does this matter? Looking at the different sectors that make up a whole project. So there's, some examples here that I've come up with, like team communications and care of the environment and social justice and strategy. But you get to choose what are the sectors that make up a whole thriving project for you, and actually assess the health and get a snapshot of the current conditions, right? So this is part of the analysis of the context in which we're working. So that'll be for you all to play with on your own time. And I hope it gives a sense of one of the many 45 different exercises in the book. And then reflection and integration. This is the final chapter 14 in the book, as you go through the entire wheel, which we're not going to do tonight. But it's about taking stock before starting anew. And this idea that without thoughtful reflection and integration, we actually miss the opportunity to cultivate new insights and new learnings that emerged somewhere in the design process. Clayton and perhaps others on the call just finished a 4-week online course with me on living facilitation. And the whole last week was dedicated to prioritizing reflection integration as facilitators. So I want to give you all an opportunity now to think about your next smart step as a way to kind of integrate some of what we've been talking about tonight. So the question is, and maybe you could think to yourself or write on a little journal, is there a next step that you want to take in your life, either as a budding change maker or a keystone change maker after this evening? And SMART stands for a step that is specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time bound. So something you could do within 2 weeks, and it doesn't have subtasks. It's a yes or no. Have I done it or not? So if you go ahead and just take a moment to jot down to yourself, as part of our reflection integration here, what is one next step that you want to take as a change maker? Thanks for all the love in the chat, Laura and Asia in particular. The image on the book cover is actually the underside of a mushroom with gills. So representing the power of myceliation and nature to help heal our fractured society. Okay, so the last part of this SMART step is writing down accountability buddy, really into the buddy system. We don't want to make change in isolation. It's not possible to sustain. And we want to be joyful and have lots of friends to do it with. So go ahead and write down one person who you want to share your SMART step with. Someone you can reach out to tonight or tomorrow. See if they have a SMART step that you could be their buddy for. And then keep going back and forth. And when you've completed your SMART step, generate another one and share it with that buddy. Hi, Becca Wild. Thanks for your comment, Casey. So here are some ways to get in touch. We're doing this virtually. If you want to learn more about the book, Madeline's going to put a bunch of links in the chat, which are in fact copyable. So you can copy and paste them. I'll send out a thank you to everyone with these links in the email also. But yeah, if you want to check out the book, you can do so at my website, abrahdresdale.com/my-book, that Katie so helpfully designed and implemented with me. And we're actually having an incredible holiday sale right now. So if you want to gift change to other people, there's a 5 books, 20% off for the holidays. And then ways to connect with Asia, with Adam, myself, with this body of work. There's a bunch here. So, well, one thing that's coming up in spring 2022, probably in May, is I'm developing an online companion course that will go with the guidebook. So Madeline's putting that information in there. You can check out some of it when you have a chance. And in addition to education, we also do consulting and resourcing at Regenerate Change. Adam, Asia, and I are an awesome team. You can reach out to them while I'm on maternity leave, or perhaps we'll craft a project together when I'm all back in the spring. That we customize the design process you've been learning about and apply it for individual change makers as well as organizations, other mission, purpose-driven entities. So you can check us out at Regenerate Change /consult. And then in terms of like the network weaving part of what we do and the education, Instagram, we put posts often. You can follow us at Regenerate Change of inspiring tidbits and upcoming events and webinars. I put out a new moon newsletter for Regenerate Change once a month with a new lunar theme. You can sign up for that at our website, regeneratechange.com. Thanks, Madeline, for putting this all in the chat. And we also have a online network through Mighty Networks called Regenerative Changemakers, which is sort of like a very socially conscious Facebook substitute, but a lot more relational and educational and focused about why we're there. It's about sharing frameworks and ideas and support with each other. And that's also where we have all of our online courses. So it's a combined platform. So that's our network. And then lastly, you can also check out my website, abrahdresdale.com. So those are all sorts of ways to stay connected, especially during winter pandemic time. And yeah, so I thought that we could close out by, if there were any particular questions, reflections, appreciations that people wanted to either come off of mute and share or put in the chat box. And I'm going to come off of our slides here so we can see everyone's beautiful face. Yeah.
I see that Leora has a question.
Oh, great. Let me see what Leora's question. Yes, I'm ready for you, my love.
Hi, Abrah. Thanks so much for this presentation. It's so sweet to get to see the culmination of so much work. And I really appreciate the way you framed it through your story also. I wanted to ask also I really appreciate that you shared the journey of the book too. And I think the transparency, especially as a writer, the transparency of a book process is a really beautiful thing to get to hear. I think for anyone who works on any kind of project that has like a beginning and an end or completion of any kind. And I just wanted to ask if, like, given that the book has had this process, if there's anything that you've wanted to add, like if you were writing the book now, if there's a section you were adding or shifting now that you would want to add to the book, or like a coda that you would bring in. It might be a lot of things, but maybe just like one, if there's one thing that you can think of.
Yeah, I mean, I think what I haven't gotten to, but is actually wanting to make a downloadable just curricular packet that people can use that's not integrated into like all of like the woven copy of the text. And so that it's also interactive and can be adapted across different learning environments. So I think kind of creating a toolkit out of the book would be my next journey. Yeah. Thanks for your question.
I want to give a testimonial. I just taught an asynchronous course about burnout to some very burnt out librarians. There were 57 of them, and I used your social niche analysis worksheet and requirements for thriving, and they totally came alive. They loved the exercises. It was really enlivening for them, and these like very crispy library workers were just like, I never thought of this before, and this is such a great exercise, and I can't say enough. And Abrah, I can send you some, like with their permission, some quotables from those.
Thanks, Madeline. Yeah, and in the permissions for the book is that any of the exercises can be used with accreditation, either to me or to the originators that I credit and have permission from to include in the book. So it can be very shareable. That said, if it's being used for students, that everyone has to buy their own copy. So it's not reproducible by photocopying or etc. Yeah. Any other questions, reflections, thoughts? Julia Walsh, are you raising your hand?
Okay, am I off mute?
Yep, you are.
I have the book, and I just want to say congrats. And just speaking from somebody in the greater climate social movement, you know, I just feel like this book is really helpful, and I wish you all the success, and also that the success that of this book, you know, reaches a lot of people in the movement, because people are definitely super burnt out, and it's needed. And this concept of social permaculture for ourselves, and both the connection to ourselves, the movement, and the earth is so critical. And loved everything you had to say about the rites of passage, which I think we're going through as humanity. And yeah, just excited for you and everything. So many blessings in this next phase of your life, the new baby coming too. And nice to see so many friends from many years ago. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Julia. Well, thanks to everyone who's here, and please be in touch. Let me know how the project sector analysis goes. Our mighty network, the Regenerative Changemakers, is a great place to post your SMART step and how that accountability process is going, and get ongoing feedback and ideas from other people who are sharing these paradigms and these frameworks. So yeah, so wonderful. Thank you again to Madeline and UMass Libraries, all the incredible people who've woven together, both as thought leaders who are in this very syncretic curriculum that is in the book, as well as my personal support midwives. Thanks everyone for all your love in the chat, and we'll also send out a recording of this with the resource links maybe tomorrow or the next day. And you know, if there are others that you think might be interested in this work, please feel free to share it with them. This is, you know, very DIY, word of mouth, because it is in a self-publishing field, as I mentioned. So we rely on all of our myceliation connections like you to help spread the word, and also to share resources back with the hub of Regenerate Change that we then put out, you know, through our newsletter and Instagram, and uplift other Changemakers work. So thank you all so much for coming. This is wonderful.